Our ship, a harbinger of death and monstrosities, landed at the port in the pleasant evening. We disembarked like a bunch of panicking stoats and ran helter-skelter to tell everyone our tale of woe. Dr. B tried for 30 minutes to convince the harbor master, then Rimon came up and the man took one bold-eyed look at Rimon, then agreed to show us to the mayor. What can I say? Rimon is just honest looking like that. We talked to the mayor and he sent people to scope out and see this landmass. After getting obvious confirmation that it was there, he ordered evacuation of the area it looked likely to hit, and he called on the men in suits to start amassing. So, that coming together well, Rimon and I had leisure the next morning to go find Tessa Vaincloak. Took us a baby bit to find it, but once we got to the right street, it was literally straightforward. The house was painted red with white shutters, yet it still seemed to have a gloomy aspect. Rimon, should we have a house with shutters? Yeah, I guess it must be more civil to have lids on the windows. We knocked on the door. It was opened by a tall, curly, red-haired woman whose expression looked unshiftably serious. Are you Tessa Vaincloak? I asked. Yes. We've got a letter for you. Here, Rimon spoke, handing it over. Oh, she took it. We found it on this ship, I gave info. When we were at this island, we had to use the ship to get off because it was full of avocado monsters and it fell to bubbly pieces. Everyone but Dr. B and the kids from the island are dead. Including Captain David McKnight, she inquired, her face still unchanged. We never saw him because when we went in his house to get the maps, he weren't in there. But everyone in town ate the guacamole, so they're all kaput. I answered with a shrug. Why did you need his maps? So we'd know where we was going when we left. What is this, 20 questions, lady? She smiled, opened the letter, and glanced over it. Thank you for bringing me this letter, children. She put it away and leaned down to look closely in my face. How old are you, Skinny? I'm 14 summers. Why you want to know? And you have seen death. I thought about it. The look in the avocado monster's eyes came to mind. Yeah, I nodded. Yes, I can see the horror of it in your little eyes. Let me give you some advice, dull, skinny girl. Find a peaceful corner of the earth away from cities and bustle and go. Live yourself at peace, you and your monstrous bird. You have horror in you, yes, but the dullness in your pallid eyes tells me there is savagery in your makeup. A rural life will suit you. And life is too short to live ill-fitted, and too full of death to birth more sorrow. Yeah, whatever. I took Rimon's hand and turned to go back down the walk. Don't go down by the wharf for a while. The monsters are coming. Rimon and I went off down the walk and onto the street. Then I turned back. She was still at the door watching us and said, You know, I didn't like that monster crack neither. We ain't monsters, you know. We're civilized. We've been civil since the great ship landing of '09. And we ain't never been monsters. She just laughed. I huffed down the street worse than that snippy lady, I'll tell you. We returned to the port to see the men in suits building a barrier. I kept on telling them to make it higher, but I guess they did the best with what they had. They armed themselves with hoses fed by pumps set on the shore. Rimon and I stood on a roof a little bit behind the barricade, watching with the guard as the wind slowly blew that big old chunk closer and closer. When it was still a good 20 or so feet away, I yelled, Shoot! Because in an instant the monsters were there. The guards balked slightly, the idiots, then rained down the water at last. Explosions peppered the air and up came that sickening avocado scent. Yuck! It was like shooting sharks in a pond. The amount of seawater pouring down was simply too much. Until that one. Through the spray of water a red glow appeared. That glow got to the top of the barricade, and 2 guards were dead almost instantly. The guards on either side turned their spray on it, but it seemed to turn instantly to steam. Angered, the monster threw one of them 20 feet. The other guard was saved because all of a sudden the monster came at Rimon and I's building. We watched with our mouths open while it climbed up the stone wall with leaps and bounds. Rimon! I grabbed onto him. I know. He turned and launched into the air. 1 second I was going up, held by Rimon, and the next I was tasting stone as the monster pulled me down out of his grasp. Suddenly, the pressure on my leg was gone, and I lifted my head to see yogurt over the monster's eyes, and in the next moment, Rimon had grabbed a hold of it and whipped it back over the edge. "Yogurt!" I screamed, going to the edge myself. I saw the creature land with a slam, but there was no sign of my white blobby friend. "I got her," Rimon chirped, landing beside me with her in tow. "Oh, thank goodness." Yogurt jumped into my arms. "Wait, Yogurt, you're cooked!" Beneath her chin, if she had one, was a hard black mark. "Reverie, look!" Rimon exclaimed. I looked back over the edge and saw the monster shaking itself off and launching itself back at the building. However, before we could flee once again, hopefully more successfully this time, a voice rang out that captured the red monster's attention. "Hello, Captain." It was Tessa Vaincloak. "Thank you for the letter," she continued. It gave a ghastly howl and started for her. She only smiled. When I got close, the monster spontaneously burst into strange flames. It was like little diamond sparks were eating up its flesh. It fell down dead, then the sparks left it and went to Tessa Vaincloak. But instead of firing her, they seemed to settle into her hands and arms. It gave her pain, yet in a blink they were gone from view, and all was normal. Tessa Vaincloak looked up at us with a sad smile. She lifted her hand, then turned and disappeared, running from the sight of what had become of Captain David McKnight. The guards had successfully destroyed the rest of the monsters and were overjoyed when they found the red monster's carcass. So Rimon and I returned to Dr. B, Mr. L, and Marina with good news. "Monsters are dead," I announced, walking into the hotel. "Reverie, what happened to you?" Marina exclaimed. "Oh, yeah, a monster grabbed me and threw me on a roof. Yogurt got burned, do you see that?" I lifted Yogurt to show them. But you're green." Marina and the rest was looking at me like a fish in a bowl. "I just got skidded a little. It'll be fine." Dr. B leaned closer to me. "Why aren't you bleeding?" "Fwaff, I don't do that. My face is just a bit smudged. It'll go back. I'm glad I didn't land on something sharp, like when I hurt my ankle. That took earnest prayer to get back together." "Reverie? What are you?" Mr. L asked. "I'm a prairie corpse," I said, like they were all stupid. "And we've been civilized since the great ship landing of '09. We ain't monsters, no sirree, and we've been civil and out the ground since way before those filthy forest carcasses." "What is a forest carcass?" Marina asked, even though Rimon was mouthing no at her for some reason. "Only the worst, low-down, uncivil pond scum that ever corpsed the earth. We've been fighting them yellow bellies for generations." I said, my dander way up to the ceiling. Dr. B cleared his throat. Excuse me, but what exactly is a prairie corpse? What is your composition? How do you differ from a regular person in that you do not bleed?" "We ain't never bled. We lived in the dirt, but only until we knew you supposed to live in houses. So we built houses, and we live in them, and we're right civil now." "Reverie, you don't need to get upset," Mr. L said kindly. "No one's saying you're not civil," he elbowed Marina. "Oh, no, you are the most civil corpse I've ever known," she told me. "You think so?" I said hopefully. "That red-headed burning lady called us monsters." "You certainly are not that," Dr. B said, eyes twitching. "Well, that's right," I said emphatically. "Are they different from you, the four—" Rimon suddenly launched into a bout of bird sneezes, interrupting Dr. B's question. Oh, you. Rimon sneezed again. "This air in here is a bother. Why don't we go eat lunch?" "Lunch sounds really good right now," he said, looking intently at Dr. B and the rest. Oh, yes, let's go. I'm hungry," Mr. L pronounced. So we went to lunch. We got a message from the mayor inviting us to dinner, but I was beat, so I declined. Everybody seemed to think that was a great idea. The next day, Rimon and I said goodbye to Dr. B and everyone. "I'll never forget you, Reverie," Marina told me. "Yeah, ditto. Hope you find a home." "Perhaps we can come visit you if ever the wind stops," Dr. B proposed, shaking our hands. "That would be fine," Rimon replied. "Are you certain you know the way?" Mr. L asked. "Uh-huh," Rimon answered, simply. The kids all gave us hugs, and I took baby Miracle into my arms one last time. "Bye-bye, baby," I said, and she gurgled a little. I handed her back. "We'll miss you," or whatever. Rimon and I took off. We flew straight as him being a crow flies all day, finally stopping for a rest on a hilltop in the twilight just as the sun was gathering up its last rays to save for tomorrow. We rested for a couple of hours, then set off again, our goal being to reach a certain church, which we did very early the next morning. The head priest welcomed us kindly, and we ate, then rested there for a while. Before we left, Monsignor Robo marked on our squiggly lines paper the next churches we could stop at, a whole line of them all the way down to the coast. Then Rimon and I set off once again. We traveled like this on and on. Sometimes we'd stay a couple of days at one church so Rimon could rest up. Every church's door was open to us. They shared whatever they had and treated us most kindly. The breads and yogurt weren't even scared of them, priests and sisters. I made sure to point out to the breads, the big bread that was at the center of each church, and they gazed upon it with awe and reverence, as did we. When many days of traveling had passed and we made it to the second from last church, our traveling got a new companion. Father Cassie was a young priest bound for the sea like us. His coming meant we'd have to go on foot for a while, but I was glad for Rimon to get a chance to rest his wings, and Father was going to help us get passage. We schlepped it down the old cobblestone road through an abandoned town, headed to the coast, and right close to it at last. And then the house collapsed and they all blew up, I related. I got off then with Mr. Ellen Marina. All the other skinnies got off on rafts. "Wow," Father whistled, looking at the two statues. He blessed them, then gave them back to me. "That wasn't a good time when we weren't together," Rimon said, frowning. "Well, it's not going to happen again," I said positively, patting his arm. He still looked a bit forlorn. Sometimes he remembers when he fell out the nest. The sun was down, but it wasn't quite dark when we came up the hill and saw the lights of the port town below. It was just fully dark when we reached the church, Our Lady of the Sea. The door was open wide, and in we went to the warm glow that resided there. The next morning we left the rectory to traipse down and find a captain. The town sure was decorated funny. There was huge weird bones hanging everywhere, and many of the houses were adorned with nets and pointy hook-ended sticks. "They sure like fish here," I thought to myself as we made it to this warehouse weird place right next to the sea. A bunch of moldy sea captains were sitting there and shooting the breeze. "Hello, I'm Father Casey. My companions and I need a ship to take us across the sea to Clare's Hope." There was a long silence as stern, weathered faces gave us the look over. At last, a slightly younger man stood up. "I can take you. Captain Sorrow's at your service." "Good. This is Rimon and Reverie. How soon can we be off?" Father Casey asked cordially. "About 2 hours," the black-haired, black-dressed man answered. "Can we see your ship first?" I asked. I wanted to make sure it looked sturdy enough to survive some things, because we'd been through some things. "Certainly, miss. Come along to the docks, if you like." We followed him out, leaving the other captains whispering and pointing at Rimon. I looked to see if Rimon had any jelly on his face or something, but he didn't, so I don't know what them captains were mummering over. I inspected the ship, deemed it good enough, and then we let the captain get to his preparations. We walked along the shore to eat some sandwiches and wait. "So what's up with all those bones anyways?" I said, taking a bite. "I believe those are whale bones, as this is a whaling town," Father Casey replied, fingering his rosary. "They hunt the whales for their oil, and as you can see from their size, it is quite a dangerous occupation." "How big are they?" Rimon asked, eating some sesame seeds. "Long as the boat, I believe." I thought over that. "Maybe it was a whale that come out the water then, like a real big one," I said to Rimon. "Yeah," he nodded. "What do you mean?" Father Casey inquired. "Well, you know how that big thing floats around in the sky," I waved my sandwich to illustrate, "and those white-haired people live on it, and they come every so often." "Yeah," I took a bite, "and bits of it fall off because it's dead or shedding or something, and stuff falls and changes stuff." I continued eating my sandwich while Father looked confused. Anyways, Father prayed his rosary, we ate our sandwiches, and Captain Sad loaded the onions or whatever he needed to bring. As we were dandering back towards the ship, we saw a painter with his art set up next to an oil lamp building. I gave his paintings a quick look over. They were pretty smudged and ugly, except for this one, which showed a weird glowing eyes dude floating above a field of pumpkins. That one had nice colors. Anyways, we then got on the ship, and that's how we left the mainland, bounding away in a ship of sorrows with the wicked wind blowing fierce the stellar black sail. We decided to go where that wind took us, fueled by our incessant desire for home and all its peace, love, and security. But I did worry that home wouldn't be the same when we returned. The end, but not really.